we are. I'm Tom Osman, and this is Whatever Comes Next, the podcast where I explore the world of underground and independent music making. And on today's episode, I am talking with Louisa and Bart, who are part of a new group called Pain Magazine, which brings together the two interestingly diverse worlds of French noise rock, post-hardcore trio Birds in Row and French-American industrial techno duo Maelstrom and Louisa. And I would say Louisa and Bart's last names, but I'm starting to get paranoid about mispronouncing people's names. So I'll put them in the description, but I'm not going to say them in case I get another last name pronounced incorrectly and get people criticizing me for it. So anyway, the music of the album Violent God, the debut record by Pain Magazine, which comes out the 3rd of October, was instantly compelling for me. A great blend of very kind of, aggressive industrial rock hardcore with these electronic techno elements. And the story of how these two different musical words came together is in itself quite fascinating. Another aspect which I found particularly interesting and which really ties in well to some of the themes of this podcast came out in a particular track that resonated with me, which is Choke Points. And to talk about kind of like the lyrical thematic concerns of the album, a lot of this record is sort of preoccupied with violence, whether it's sort of physical or emotional or mental. And then Choke Points itself is more about the violence of capitalism. And as Louisa talks about in the interview, she was reading at the time a book called Mood Machine by Liz Pelly, which is all about Spotify. And I think particularly given that I've just spoken with Chris Grigg and then Caroline Harrison before that about Ampwall as an alternative to Bandcamp, which in a sense is itself an alternative to Spotify, this ties in quite nicely to those discussions, I think. One other incidental thing to mention for anybody who is watching this episode, you will notice, well, an incidental thing to say, you probably, if you do tend to watch these episodes rather than listen to them, you may notice that the order that I do interviews and the order that I do the introductions is not all in sequence. You can tell that sometimes by how much facial hair I have, for example, but in the last couple of months, you may have also noticed that in certain episodes, I have a black eye. Or maybe even in an introduction or two. So anyway, this interview, this Pain Magazine interview, is the last interview you will see where I have a black eye. So I kind of felt that, having never actually spoken about it before, this might be a reasonable moment to address it. And I suppose all I can say at this point is that in terms of the black eye, the first rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club. Anyway, Pain Magazine will be playing throughout Europe from, I think, the 9th of October is when they have their first gig in France. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the name of the venue, but I will put necessary links in the description so you can check out where they're going to be playing. But they've got various dates lined up in France, I think also Belgium. I think there's a day in the Netherlands, another one in Czech Republic. And in fact, they're going to be playing in London, but that one comes a little bit later. So they're going to be touring Europe in October, November, December. And then at the moment, they've got a date on the 19th of February playing at Oslo in London. I suppose one other thing worth mentioning is that this is now episode 99. So episode 100 is just around the corner. I have interviewed 6 very cool guests for that. I have managed just about to edit it down into some kind of manageable form. And yeah, there's going to be something else that I'm going to be announcing, but I'm going to announce that with the release of episode 100. So I'm just teasing it like that for now. And until then, you can follow me on all social media at Tom Osman Sounds. You can go to my website, tomosmansounds.com, if you want to check out my music and my writings about my music. I am going to be on Ampwall. I said I was going to be on Ampwall before, but then I came out to Thailand and realized I hadn't taken any of the files with me. So when I get back to the UK, I will upload my various different projects onto Ampwall. Until then, you can find them through my website as they are dotted around on Bandcamp. I think that's enough from me. I'm going to play a track from Violent God at the end of the episode, a little clip coming just now. Other than that, there is nothing left to be said, but Louisa and Bart of Pain Magazine, take it away.
Is it cold and wet? Did you ask for it? Sky's coming down for me. Does it fill you up? Could it be enough?
So, well, yes, thank you for joining me. It's cool to get to talk to you and get your insights about your music. I've been listening to Violent God, and it's a pretty harrowing record, I have to say, but it is a very enjoyable one. It does have moments of, I don't know if lightness is quite the right word, but there are elements that are more soothing and elements that are definitely more violent, I guess, kind of fitting to the name. I suppose it's like a natural point to start, seeing as it is the title track and it is the start of the album, would be Violent God. What can you sort of tell me about the origin of that, and how much did that track then shape what became the rest of the album?
I think for me, at least, that's the one that feels like the most kind of evident combination of our two universes. And I know that, like, in writing it, that was actually the first song that we wrote together. And there had been, like, we came into the studio and kind of Mile and I obviously knew each other from years of collaboration, and we knew Joris because we played together. But it was our first day meeting Bart and Canton, so it was really like I felt like I had a lot to prove. So I tried to. I think the process is that we started out listening to a song. I forget what song it was, but it was kind of like sing song. We wanted to base the structure of the song on another song. It was like kind of sing songy pop.
Like
Not pop, but like indie pop.
War
It was
Paint?
War Paint. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool
It
band.
was War Paint. Yeah, very cool band. But like the result ended up being so far from that. So the irony of the distance between the starting point and the end point is not lost on us.
So did you actually, like when you got together, you wrote it and you recorded it in the same day? Do I understand that right?
Yeah, Joris, our drummer, is a producer as well. So he's got his own studio, and he brought all his gear to the practice room where we all gathered. So that was actually the first time for us composing and recording at the same time. You know, not really like composing live everything, like with everyone in the same room. And it was very, very interesting.
Yeah, so what then was that process like for you, Bart? Like how different was that to anything else that you'd done before?
Well, it's super different. Like in the kind of music that we play, if you live in like the countryside like we do, it's usually you practice in a practice room together, you jam, you know, and you write songs like together. And there's always been this thing about bands in Paris, for example, where like practice rooms are so expensive that you have to compose everything on computer, send each other's, you know, the different ideas, and maybe at some point you have like you have gathered enough things to have a song, and then you can like, you know, take a three like 30 euros per hour practice room so you can actually try the song. So it's two different things, but we never tried the second one. That's what I was saying. Like we've always jammed, and everything has always been very organic. So like that was the very first time we were actually, you know, like messing around with our guitar tracks and drums and stuff, and also like what Louisa and Mael would give us, you know, because it was like always back and forth. Like we would give them some drum parts, they would like fuck around with it, and then we would do the same with their bleep bloops in and synths in general.
And there is definitely a lot of, like you can hear, it's an organic melding throughout the album, but you do have these different elements. Like there are parts that have more of a sort of a driving, thumping, percussive rhythm to them, more sort of electro, and then there are other parts where the guitars come out more and sort of lead the tracks more. So like Louisa, what was it like for you in terms of having those different sort of sonic elements?
I mean, like I think one of the things that we really enjoy, at least Mile and I, and then as a result, Pain Mag, is like the idea of never making something the same way twice, like changing the process for each body of work. And so to have this opportunity to work in a way that we'd never worked before either. And like basically the setup is that we had two separate rooms. One was mostly like the Birds and Row room, and one was mostly ours. And then we would kind of circulate back and forth. And like some songs would start in one place and end in the other place, and some would like do the opposite. And it was just it was really exciting to kind of watch the process itself transform the work. Because like nobody at no point was there any track on the album that we're like, we want to make a song like this. It was like it was very
Intuitive.
yeah, intuitive and like explorative. Like it was a very kind of curiosity and play driven process, even when the result is really like kind of gnarly. And that I don't know, it was really like it feels really fulfilling and exciting just because it is definitely, I think, uncharted territory for all of us.
That's the cool thing with like doing a first record as well, is that you don't, or like, first songs with a new band, is that you don't have any expectations from yourself or from anyone else. So you can just like play around and explore, and that's what we did. Like we never like, so the way we worked, it was kind of like Mel and Louisa would do all like the techno electro part, and they send it to us while we were trying to do things like adding guitars, or maybe just like twist the things that they did. They would like work on another song. So it was very like, oh, we were always like producing music, and usually we like you would stop at like 7 or 8, something like that, and we would end at like 3 in the morning with the Birds in Row guys. Like really
They
like,
work much harder with the real instruments.
yeah, I don't know if it was much harder. It's just like, I guess like I work better at night usually with everything I do. So yeah, you dive in the song, and when we were on our own, there was like no question about like, can we do this or that? We knew we had like total freedom, so we could like. And in the same way, when we would give like a drum part to Mal and Louisa, they knew that they could do anything they wanted. There was no ego involved. There was no like, this is not my drums, or like, this is not the beat that I wrote or whatever. And like total freedom like this really helped to produce something like exciting and surprising for us all, I guess.
What was the process like of sort of finding the balance between electronic drums and a real drum kit?
Whatever works.
Yeah, it really depended on the song. I think sometimes like we would start something and then they would like strip everything back and replace the electronic drums with wheel drums. Or like honestly, at certain points it would like completely go back and forth. Like we would try something else and then it would circle back to the original thing. Like and I don't know, it's really exciting to kind of be with everybody who's so like talented and proficient kind of creatively, but also who is really like, as Bart was saying, like egoless and kind of unattached to like, I need to touch the button, like, and I think it really serves the body of work in a way that felt like it actually kind of, instead of just being like a collaborative EP or even a couple songs, like I think the enjoyment of the musicking, like the process that's what kind of drove, us to create a large body of work in a short amount of time, and then have this kind of be forced to create a new container for it, which is Pain Magazine.
So if I've got it right, from the point that you came in and you recorded Violent God, it was only like 2 or 3 weeks from that point to actually doing the whole album. At what point did you decide, oh, we're making an album?
Well, the first practice session was like 5 days, I think, 4 or 5 days, and it was at that time we were just like, we're gonna do like a collaboration together.
We're gonna make a song.
Yeah, we're gonna make a song and see what happens. And we ended up having like 5 songs in 5 days, of like 5.5 songs, something like that. And we're like, whoa, okay, so that's going very fast. And so we're like, maybe we should like book another session and do an album rather than an EP. And very, organically, we were like, so it doesn't sound like anything that we do. So it's not really a collaboration work. It's more like a real band, It's really different. So we did like 2, 3, 4 sessions in total, which were like there was like 3 sessions in like doing all the music and stuff, but another session at Louisa's where we did like vocals and stuff like that. And yeah, in like 17 days we did like 11 songs. So we were pretty.
And then made
pretty
yours like produce it.
yeah. That's also a fact that like so we had like this raw material after all like those 17 days, and we wanted everything to go fast because we have tight schedules like with our different projects. Because like we have Birds in Row, we have Louisa and Maelstrom. We like they have like a whole bunch of projects on their own, and we have our bassist who has a solo project as well, Quentin Sauvé. So there's you have to find some space to put Pain Magazine in there, and so like we have to go quick, and so the second part of like the producing was actually Joris, our drummer, doing everything in the studio for like a month and a half or something like that, or 2 months. Like
During which
really,
he like went deaf.
yeah. He worked his ass off, and he would like every day send us files and asking us like, is it fine with you? So we could like giving some feedbacks. But he did like a huge like major work of stripping everything down and like making everything work together for like to make a proper record, not just like a practice room record or something like that.
Yeah, demos.
Yeah.
He really made it special.
And you mentioned about how when you were coming up with the tracks and you were recording them, you weren't sort of going, oh, here's a track that sounds like this, we want to have another one that sounds like that. They all sort of existed on their own little islands. But I'm wondering, when it came to the point that you went, okay, we've got an album and now you're starting to have it produced, did you start to have sort of an idea of going, right, we want to have certain kind of like sonic themes that are going through it? Like how much were you sort of shaping the overall sound of it at that point?
I mean, I think that as a result of process and as a result of also like perspective, like where we come from, although it might sound really different, I feel like creatively, politically, and kind of in terms of like ethos, the bands really had their heart in the same place. And so like that, I feel like was more of an umbrella versus like how we wanted it to sound. Like the sound kind of came out of that energy. And because each song exists as an island, but because as an island, like it's a lot of close together islands because everything was created in such a kind of like tight, temporal space that, it was easy to not be like, well, that sounds too much like that. It was like, well, we want to keep playing. Like we want to have a lot of like a sonically broad palette because we want to explore new spaces,
And for us, I think what shapes the final the thing that gives you like a common thread with all the songs is also the way you structure your album, like the track list, and that's a really hard work. It took us a lot of time to really decide on like which songs should go first and second and third and whatever, and when you do this properly, I think it creates some kind of like a common thread, like like you can almost think that everything has been composed to be in that specific order and whatever, when actually it was just like chaotically composed, like like we have this idea, okay, let's work on that, you work on this, and also I think as you said, the fact that everything has been composed on the same time frame, like very short time frame, like for me, songs are on their own islands, as you say, but it's also the same inspiration, the same vibe, the same energy. So yeah, it's definitely the way that we have something in common with all the songs. I mean,
yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And to your point about the getting a certain flow from the track list, that is something that I feel going through the record is that it does have a good organic and varied flow to it. So it's like Violent God starts off quite harsh, one of the harshest in terms of both like the vocal delivery and the vocals themselves. The lyrics themselves are very abrasive, and the track is quite thumping. And then you get to a track like Dead Meats, the other single that you've got, which is a really nice contrast because that one's more sort of driven by the guitars. I would say it's doesn't have as much of a club feel as some of the other tracks, like a murky underground Berlin.
Like that's our power pop.
And then you do have other tracks like a Storm is more kind of woozy and sort of spacey, which I think is a nice contrast, having that about halfway through. And then probably one of my favorite tracks of the album, both in terms of the music but also the lyrics, is Choke Points. I really like this one, and I think that's quite interesting too, because a lot of the lyrics feel very much about sort of violence in interpersonal relationships and like emotional violence, but This one, Choke Points, more seems
Violence of capitalism.
yeah. And so I was like, and some of the things that you're talking about that are also particularly interesting for me with some of the things that I like to ask people that I interview about the music business and different things that you have to manage. So I am curious to get into that track a bit. What was the story behind that? Because I imagine that with both of you having been in the music world for a long time, there's a lot of personal kind of angst that's fed into this.
Yep. Yep. I'll let you answer, Louisa, because you came up with the lyrics and we were all like, let's go. Let's fucking go.
I mean, I've been on a very like anti-Spotify rampage for some time. Like most of my social media is dedicated to shitting on Spotify. And right now I'm in the process of like reading Liz Kelly's incredible book, Mood Machine, which I could not recommend more. And if any of your listeners love love hating Spotify, this is a really excellent and important read. But yeah, I mean, I think between that, the ideas presented there, which is like the dangers of choke point capitalism, which is a term coined by an author called Cory Doctorow, who's also really interesting. And this idea that it's like the lie of the music business being a meritocracy is like louder than ever. And it's so deeply disheartening. For those of us who are trying to make something outside of like the silo of listenability being the only metric that is meaningful in terms of like being able to make a living in this industry. And yeah, it brings up a lot of like angst and rage and grief. And I'm sure it'll stream really well. I'm sure it'll be like constantly playlisted everywhere. But I mean, I think that, you know, there's a lot of people who are not informed about how this is working, you know, just in terms of what the kind of internal machinations of digital streaming platforms are. And I think the song, I actually initially wrote that song for a collaboration with an artist called Slave to Society, and then asked him, I was like, I think it's going to work better as a Pain Mag track. So I asked him if we could use the lyrics, and yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be one of the more challenging, just because there's so many words, and also powerful tracks when we play live, just because it's like it feels really heavy right now. You know, just making music in that paradigm. And I think I know I personally, and I think like in different ways, all of the artists in the band are coming to terms with this idea that like, if I'm not going to stop, like if making music is what I do and kind of who I am, and not like, it's not about, you know, money, success, fame, and glamour, then like, how do I kind of come to terms with this being the political and financial reality of the industry that we're working in?
Yeah, coming from the punk DIY scene, I was not expecting like what the industry is actually like, how the industry is actually, and so I think like when we gathered together to for the first like a session of like composing songs and stuff, we were all in that state of like, oh, fuck that industry, like really I can't bear it anymore. And so that's why this song is I think we really, when we started writing it, it was like, whoa, this is massive. And in terms of like emotions, in terms of like, you know, the statement that it is, and we wanted to pay attention on like, how does it have to sound to, you know, make a proper case or room for the lyrics, I guess. And so that's for example, that's one of the song where we went very extreme on like exploding the master in the middle, like, and like all the guitars, they sound like, I don't know, like brutal violins, or I don't know, they sound very weird. And everything was made to be annoying, and at some point it was even too annoying that we had to clean it. But you know, it was really like, I think that's the first song, or maybe the only song that we really wrote everything around the lyrics. Because usually how we work is like we write the music, then we write the lyrics on top of that. I don't know how you do in general, Louisa, because I know you write a lot next to, you know, like every day. It's part of your everyday life. But usually what we do, we play music. We know, like we compose music. We see how we feel about it, and then we write lyrics on top of that. But this one was like really like, okay, so this is what we're gonna say with the song, and how do we say it in music now. So it was totally reversed from like what we used to doing. And so it was really, really interesting. And it's cool that it's your favorite song because it's also one of my favorites.
Yeah, I like the way as well how, like, to your point about what you were trying to do with the sonic element of it, that it does, you feel it ramp up. You know, when you've got that big explosion of sound, like it really
Yeah.
is very impactful because it's already grabs your attention with what you're singing about. And then, yeah, I think the music just really does. I was going to say feed it, but that's kind of like, you know, feeding the beast, as you mentioned. But it does, yeah, it definitely supports
Nice.
the words to it. To that point, though, about like artists finding their way in this world. I am curious to know, like, for yourselves as artists in the music world, and you've been making music and recording for, I guess, both of you more than 10, 15 years, perhaps more.
Yeah, yeah, more.
I think as a result, as like a cumulative effort, I think the band is like 100 years.
Okay. So, you know, I talk to a lot of underground artists in different countries making different types of music, and I get very interesting variety of how people sort of make a living or don't make a living, but somehow manage to sort of carve out a space. How would you sort of, from your point of view and your experiences, what scope is there for artists like yourself to actually make a living through music?
In France, we're pretty lucky because we have what we call intermittence, which is a specific status that is based on the unemployment welfare fair. I don't know how to say, but basically, because we only have like 1 day contracts when we're musicians, you know, when you play on stage. If it was just like the normal way of doing things in France, you wouldn't get to unemployment money, because normally when you work for a certain amount of time, then you lose your job, you can, you know, you get some money for some month, so you can recover and find a new job or whatever. And so we wouldn't get this money as musicians because our contracts are so spread all over the year and everything. So they created this specific status that's awesome, which means that when we don't play, we still get money from the state. And it's a unique status. There's nothing like, there's one thing that kind of looks like this in Belgium, but in the rest of the world, you won't find anything like that. So that's a huge privilege that we have. Still, it means that you have to do like decent shows, at least if you're a band, because like if you're on a solo journey, like it's okay, you don't need to be paid a lot. But like when you're like 5 people like us, it means that we need to ask like 1,000 euros of money to the promoters, for example. So in a DIY setup, it doesn't work at all. So that's why with Birds in Row, we've never wanted to become professional musicians, because we didn't even think that we could actually reach that point. And so yeah, now we're pretty lucky with that. And you know, all like there's other money that comes from, you know, how would you call it, like copyrights on your music. Yeah. And so for me, I'm just gonna talk on my personal point of view, but it's been very hard for me to become a professional musician, because it kind of like strips something away, and at the same time you're like, whoa, I'm so lucky that I live from my passion, you know. That's what I've always wanted to do, but at the same time you're like, whoa, now I have to talk about contracts, and maybe sometimes it's not our case, but like some people have to talk about like sponsorships or whatever, like subsidies and this kind of shit, and that's not what you play music for, you know. I don't play music for like selling T-shirts or this kind of things, so personally at least. So I feel we're very lucky. I don't know, like Louisa might have like a very interesting point of view, because you know the American side and the French side now, so it's very different.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, as an American artist, like living in France and having benefits of the French system, like all of my American friends outside of like wildly successful kind of more mainstream artists have like 3 to 4 other jobs, you know? And so to be able to like live and work in France and have the benefit of intermittent status, which like makes it possible to make kind of non-commercial music and make a living. It's incredible. I think, you know, it's interesting because like I started, you know, on the DJ side as an electronic artist, and then like making band money. It's like, well, now you have to pay for all of your travel and all of your accommodation and split it with 5 people and show up with like equipment. as opposed to like a USB stick and headphone and getting paid like 5 times as much. It's crazy. But at the same time, I feel like it's like at this point, if you're in it for the money, you're insane.
Yeah.
So you have to be in it. Like what the fuck is wrong with you? And like, where are your priorities? So you have to be in it for something else. You know, it requires like, if this is a choice to make work, to make music, like the choice must be examined because there's definitely other ways to like make a living that are much easier and don't require quite as much effort. So, you know, I mean, I feel like I had expectations of my solo career pre-COVID that like didn't go as I had planned or didn't go in the direction that I'd hoped. And I had to like do a lot of internal work to like reconcile the reality and the dream without bitterness and to like make a choice to feel the agency of like, I don't want to cave to the like the idea that this is going to be commercially successful. I just want to be able to make music and keep getting to make music and making a life with music, whatever that looks like, you know. And ideally the music that I love to play and people that I love to play it with.
It's
So,
true that it's very different for you because you can do like the duo with Mael, you can do DJing, and like you have different ways of playing music when we only do the same shows with Virgin Row, for example. So that's why in the band, because we know that, you know, it's a privilege to be paid for that and that we shouldn't count on it during like lasting for too long. We also have jobs next to the bands, you know, and just in case, just in case it all falls down for some reason. And but yeah, it's definitely like, as you said, like playing music to make money today is just I mean, there's AI. AI is
like, what are
doing
you
better
doing?
music than you do now. So,
You know, with a lot of the people that I admire making music or art in general, they do operate in a very underground world. And so I can see that there can be a lot of creative freedom to that where you're not depending on commercial success or a particular level of commercial success. But the thing that grates for me really is when there's a sense of someone is getting rich from this. So it's like, you know, with the Spotify topic, that so much money is being generated here and it feels like such an imbalance, and that's irritating. You know, if it's people making music on an independent level and there's independent labels and there's sort of like a little community that's feeding into that, then I think, well, that's great. And it can sort of exist. Yeah. But it's the beast outside, which is particularly grating.
it's one of the things that really you know, knocked me down when we entered the music industry for real. Like, I mean, like outside of the DIY scene and playing in squats and stuff, is that it took us a bunch of years to realize that musicians are the last to be paid. Like when you sell a record, because you always hear about the stories about, you know, huge companies like Sony or whatever, and when you're a musician on those major labels, you get like 1/8 of the selling price of your CD or whatever. That's something that I've always heard since I was a teenager, but actually you don't realize that this system shapes the way independent labels and stuff like that work as well, because they all want to make it, they all want to do it the same way and stuff. So even though there's like differences, obviously there's still something where like the artist is usually the last on the line, you know, being paid, and it's really hard to fight against that. Also because everyone has to live, obviously. So you don't want to tell your label that they should work for free or anything like that. But with everything costing so much now, like, you know, we do vinyls, for example, like LPs with our band, like we're gonna do it with the Pain magazine as well, and it's got a certain price and everything. So, you know, everything starts to pile up. And like I had this discussion this weekend because we were on a hardcore festival, and I had a friend who stopped his label because it was like, dude, like people are buying LPs at like 36 euros now. What the fuck? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So like, I feel I don't know where I'm going right now, but you know, it's yeah, it's just that I feel like musicians should start paying more attention on how they are like treated and valued, and maybe start doing things more independently. Like, I mean, you created your own label with Rach. We did the same recently. I think that's that's the moment where you start to gain more power, when you get more involved in the production of your records or your music, and you know, the distribution of it, or like whatever, because the whole system is kind of like flawed with like this idea that, you know, there's a lot of money to be made, and at the end, like, the artist doesn't matter really.
I mean, also, I think that, you know, like there's that really great line in that Gillian Welch song, Everything is Free, where she says, like, I never minded working hard, it's who I'm working for.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of like wisdom in that. And in terms of like Bart was saying, like um, being close to like owning the manufacturing of your
Mm.
work, but also this idea that like, you know, touring is expensive.
Mm.
Like I think there's this expectation that like whatever musicians lost in digital streaming platforms would be made up for on the road. But now the cost of touring, especially post COVID, especially with a lot of like the mid-size markets, so like 500 to 1500 cap kind of being wiped out, has made like that side a lot more difficult, especially with the cost of gas or, you know, flights going up. So this idea of like, at the moment, it's a very, very unsustainable economy. And, you know, I think that we're, we're doing it anyway because we're insane. But, you know, there's not a lot of hope if things continue on like this. And so to use this platform for advocacy is really important, just because like we want artists who don't make widely playable work to be able to have a possibility of like platform and perspective, because that's valuable. You know, that it's not just like, if the only means of valuing music is like play count, that means the stuff that is more challenging and requires more as a listener gets kind of pushed by the wayside. And like, those are the records that have saved my life. You know, those are the records that have like opened my world. So I feel like it's important to talk about it and to keep talking about it, because like there are a lot of like laid back listening fans who like aren't kind of, not fans, listeners who are kind of happy just to hear whatever elevator music gets pumped through their streaming platform. But like, that's clearly not who our music is for. And we want to create channels that they can still access the work that we make in hopes that they find it meaningful, you know?
Yeah, I feel like, and I don't know if this is necessarily just an online phenomenon, but with the online world that we're in, there are a lot of signals which are not particularly revealing in terms of what's actually behind them. So, for example, you know, like if you're on a website like YouTube, whatever, and there are likes and you click the like button, like what does a like mean from one person to another? You add the likes up and you go, oh, this thing has 2,000 likes, this thing has 1,000 likes. It doesn't really tell you much about the experience that went into the reaction to it. And I think it's like with how many listens on Spotify, with like engagement, to use these kind of terms on social media, like, yeah, it means something, but it also doesn't necessarily equate to how many people are going to come to a show or how many people like really emotionally invested in something. It doesn't, like, I sort of feel that as well with like, you know, if people want to protest about something, you can have a lot of people online that can sort of, yeah, talk about some kind of support, but it doesn't feel to be something you can really quantify as well as if you see people out on the streets.
Mm.
So I feel like I did have a question initially when I started that, and now I can't quite remember what it was, but
No, but it's true. It's true. That's something that, you know, now that the industry all revolves around Spotify and the counts, like the listener counts and stuff like that, because it's really what it is. It's like, oh, do you want a show in my town? Like, how many listeners do you have? You know, what could we expect? It's so weird because I've seen artists with like 4 or 5 times more listeners than we have get 4 or 5 times less people at the shows that we have, and so it doesn't mean anything. Like, it really depends on on different scenes, and you know, it's like comparing sales for like LPs, for example, or vinyls. You know, it's not the same thing in the hardcore punk scene than in the pop scene. You know, people in the pop scene usually don't buy LPs, like at least like not until recently, because it got like, you know, hype again, but normally it's not something that they do. And in the hardcore scene, it's been since the 80s that everyone is, you know, clinged to vinyls and stuff like that. So it's so weird to use the same numbers and the same how would you say, like, indicators for every type of artist around the world. You know, it's really 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 weird to me.
is there the scope though that once you've got a bit of a history of playing under a particular name, like, you know, if you say we've played here, we've played there, we've played to these audiences, can that then be a substitute when you're going to promoters or whoever else and saying, you know, this is the audience that we've got, rather than saying this is how many plays we've got on Spotify?
I think you kind of need both.
Yeah.
I think, you know, at this point, promoters are also like the ecosystem is warped in that, like, especially for kind of more underground markets, the promoters are also putting themselves out in order to kind of host events and book bands. And so, like, you know, while sort of more commercial or mainstream festivals or shows might look more at the data analytics, like, I think for a more DIY culture or kind of more underground culture might require more like a list of accomplishments in terms of dates. You know, but this has been a really kind of strangely revolutionary process in terms of Pain Mag, because, like, I think before the first single came out, we had like a 23-day tour booked, and like that's never happened in my 20 years in the music business, you know? So that's exciting. Like, it feels exciting to be kind of like hot new shit with something to say after 20 years of doing this. But it's also like, oh man, so what does the production process look like, or what does musicking look like after this phase, you know? I wonder if you feel that, Bart.
No, for me, it was like, it's super exciting, but at the same time, I was kind of like disgusted, because it's like, if we were a new band with no one in Birds in Row or Maelstrom and Louisahhh, we wouldn't get all those shows, you know. And that's how the industry works. It's not always on the music, and I feel it's mainly about, you know, the hype and I mean, like, our labels now, they're not telling us to do good shows. They're telling us to do good content on Instagram. And you know, that means a lot to me, and that's why I'm not very productive on Instagram because I hate that. You know, it keeps changes, but for the worse, I feel. And when we got those shows, I was super excited, because obviously I want to play those shows, and it's gonna be a lot of fun. Like, I know, and I love the music now, and it's I don't know, everything is cool, but at the same time, it pointed at something about the music industry that I was like, you know, you know, when an agent tells you like, oh, your first Paris show is gonna be in front of 600 people, you're like, what? I don't understand. Like, that's not how we work usually. Usually, you play like a shitty bar, and then maybe next time you play in a club, you know.
The machine likes us, Bart.
Yeah, you know, no, but I mean, I'm not complaining about it. It's just, it's really just, for me, it pointed at something that, you know. How can I say that?
Like, it's
kind of
deeply
unfair.
lacking justice.
Yes,
Right.
definitely unfair. Also, because in the band we have different projects that have different type of hypes, and some of us struggle with some projects and stuff. And you see, this one is like very first time we haven't have the record mixed yet, and we already have a tour, you know, and so it's really surprising. And I can understand that if you compare this to our other projects where you struggled more or whatever, you're a bit like bitter in a certain way. But obviously, I feel very grateful to be able to do that. But my first reaction was like, oh fuck, and then okay, it's gonna be fun.
And I want to talk about your forthcoming tour, but also about the release of the record itself. So you've touched on having your own labels. Where does Humus Records fit into that for the band, and how is the album going to come out? It's on the 3rd of October, right, that the album's actually getting released?
So Humus Records is the label from our friends in Colguns, who's a Swiss band, who we did a collaboration with before doing the Pain magazine work. And so they're very close friends of ours. We got in touch with different labels before that, and at the end of the process, we still wanted to be very involved with our own labels. Like, we didn't want to give it away to one label like this. We wanted to be involved with our stuff. But like all the other labels, they were like kind of like, I don't know, cold-handed on this. They were like, I don't know if we should do it or not, blah blah blah. So we just reached out to friends we know that we love the work of, and their ethos are just exactly the same that we have. And yeah, that's what they're doing. They're doing all the production, like Printing, pressing all the records and stuff like that. Distribution is gonna be like they kind of manage the distribution too. But nowadays, distribution is like 1/3 the band on tour, 1/3 label, 1/3 the distribution company. So yeah, like they're doing this for us, and because I think also they know that we're probably gonna sell the record, and it's not gonna be too hard to sell. I hope.
And what formats is that going to be on?
LPs and CDs. LPs are very important for us. I don't really know if you do LPs actually, Louisa. I've never.
In fact, we had to stop just because I have so many LPs in my house that have gone unsold. Because like as in dance music, there's not merch stands, right?
Yeah.
So like the economy comes from buying drinks at a bar, right?
Yeah.
It's not coming from like selling merch. And so it's, unless you're a really kind of niche label for very specific kinds of dance music, there's not a huge market. I mean, we kind of keep a steady output flow, but at this point, it's not cost effective to produce vinyl for every release, at least for like our solo albums. Yes, of course, but like it feels,
Yeah.
when more
in
unsold
ours,
vinyl in my house.
yeah, it's a common thing for a lot of bands as well. But like we are lucky to not have this at all, and usually it's our label who keeps the stock, so we don't have to have it in our house. But yeah, in our scene, it's so common to buy vinyls and T-shirts and stuff like that to support the bands that, it's good to have a vinyl because it's like a LP because it's it's bigger for the artwork. Also, the sound of it is particular, and there's some kind of like collector thing as well that can be cool.
Well, and also Bart, like, don't you guys have for Birds in Row? Don't you have a pay what you want for all
Yeah.
of the merch?
Yeah, all
And
we
that's
do.
really cool.
Yeah, we do, that's something we haven't discussed for Pain Magazine yet. we
We're
have to
doing it on the
discuss
podcast.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it's just since the beginning. So we started in 2009 because we didn't want it to sell shirts or records at least we didn't want it to sell shirts in the first place, like merch in general. We started like printing our own shirts to be involved in this and not just like being like a retailer or something like that. And so at the end of the discussion was like, what's the price that we should sell them for? And we couldn't find a price because it doesn't make sense for me. That's not my job to sell shirts and stuff like that. So we decided that rather than doing this, we would ask people to give us a donation, like whatever they wanted to give. So also it replaces the merch in an environment where it's like helping the band and not getting a cool shirt for your next party or whatever.
Yeah, I like the pay what you want concept. I was talking with someone else about this. That I remember when Radiohead did that with In Rainbows, and at the time people were like, "Whoa, what is this bizarre thing that they're doing?" And I like the fact that it's become quite a common concept, and it does give the opportunity for people to show that actually when they have the option of paying whatever they want, a lot of the time people actually pay more than they might have been asked to do.
That's kind of the funny thing is that the first question people ask when we say that we do a pay what you want thing is that, but don't you get screwed? Like never actually. And it's actually a thing that made me trust people more in my life, because coming from a small town, when we started like touring in Europe in general, we were like kind of like, I don't know what to expect from people from Berlin or like Warsaw or whatever. And then in those different cities we went to, everyone was so generous that you're like, okay, so actually, you would think that people will steal from you, but they will never do that. They really want to help you out. That's why they come to your show. That's why they come to talk to you after the show as well. And that's why they give you more when you give them the opportunity to do it. And the cool thing is that also, if you're not fortunate, even you're not rich, you can actually give a little bit less, so you can still have access to the cool shirt that you want to have, or like the LP, so you can listen to it at home or whatever. So I really like this. This thing is very, very important for us.
Yeah, it's friendly towards the artists, but and also the fans as well. If they do have less available to spend, they can still be a part of it. So we've touched on shows and we've touched on tours. Maybe to finish off, you can tell me about what you've got lined up in terms of shows to support the record. And as much as we have all mentioned our misgivings towards social media, how are you generally going to be promoting what you're doing with the band in terms of shows coming up and any other news?
Let me pull up the poster. I don't know where we're going or what we're doing.
I'm not sure. I feel like you're starting either on the 9th or the 10th of October. Maybe you're starting in Paris and then you're going to be playing in London in February, but I'm not sure if that's sort of a little island of a show and most of your touring is October, November.
Yeah, a lot of the
correct.
shows are like, October, November, mainly France,
One
bit
Swiss,
of,
one Belgium, one UK so far, one Netherlands. So, we're going. I mean, it's again mostly France, and it's except for the Oslo in London on February 19th. We have
it's a nice club.
We're going to be playing mostly, as you said, kind of through October through December, and I think dates are still being added. And hopefully, well, I guess seeing how this run goes, we'll be thinking beyond that soon. But in terms of, I don't know, social media, I think globally is challenging and frustrating, but we are working on a video for the next single, and the one after single 3, the support single, which I think will be Horse Song. We've just set a date for shooting the horse.
Yeah. Shooting the horse?
We'll be thrilled about, with a video camera. He has to live. No animals will be harmed in the making of the Horse Song video. I think it's just like we're trying to keep it authentic, and I mean the strategy is really bad, like in that there is none. But I think that we're just like we want this to reach as many people as we'll find the music meaningful and play good shows and have a good time.
Yeah, probably the best way to promote what we do would be on stage. So that's cool that we have so many shows coming up, and that's why we're gonna work hard this summer to be able to play those songs live. But yeah, promoting on social medias and stuff. Yeah, that's what we talked about. Like, I don't know, 10 minutes ago. It's not really our thing. Like, we're not community managers and this kind of shit. So what we do is play music and talk about music. And so that's what we're going to do on the road, I guess.
Yeah. Well, word of mouth is a thing that will have its power regardless of what other technology exists swirling around from one period to another. Well,
we hope.
well, indeed, we hope. We can but hope. Louisa and Bart, thank you so much. It was great to get to talk to you. Great for your insights. Great music. I hope you get a really good reception when it comes out. And maybe I'll get the chance to see you guys on stage as well.
Yeah, that'd be tight.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Tom.
Thank you.
It's lovely talking to you.
Did you ask for it? Sky's coming down for me. Does it fill you up? Could it be enough? Voids opening for me. Did I make it tough? Did it even touch? Feel you calling out to me. Again, opening to win. Thought I let it go. Thought that you should know. Do I believe in a violent God? You make me believe. Do I believe in a violent God? Bring me to my knees. Do I believe in a violent God? You make me believe. It could make me sick. How I wanted it. I'd remember everything. Always bad ideas, but I love them still. Keep me awake, waiting. I don't mean no harm, but sound the alarm. Maybe I'm the villain. Slipping out again, opening to win. Thought I let go. Thought that you should know. Do I believe in a violent God? You make me believe. Do I believe in a violent God? Bring me to my knees. Do I believe in a violent God? You make me believe. Do I believe in a violent God? Bring me to my knees. Do I believe in a violent God? You make me